Live. Okay. So we've been a couple of days off, but the work never stops. I think we got some pretty cool stuff to show you. Um, Basically, lots and lots has happened since we were last live, but also lots of ups and downs, which is why we weren't able to do the streams. So today, what we're going to try to do is to create a little repo for a library for a workflow DSL, I guess, a domain-specific language that I kind of conjured up, and then we polished it up with Ryan. That will become the backbone, I think, of our ChatGPT client. I guess our ambitions have escalated, and with that, we found we hit a bit of a point where we had to figure out how to what the right abstraction was. And I think this little language we are making is cool by itself, and it's going to be a good backbone for what we're building. So and also it's just ridiculously small. So we kind of just decided that this is a great little project to focus on for a little bit, to kind of perfect it, to give it a good workflow on GitHub, to put all the bells and whistles that we want to have on every module we make, like automated versioning, automated testing, automated merging, automated issue management, automated whatever. With the thinking behind that being that once we set that up nicely for one repo, we can just kind of pop those out. Naturally, that will probably take longer than we think, but also it will be more valuable than we realize. So, kind of the errors probably cancel out if we're lucky. But yeah, we have a lot of excitement here, and yeah, the catalyst is that we think we have a really cool little project that will assist our larger project, but also that is a tiny code base. Basically, it was sub 100 lines, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the way to do this is I will start the process where we will, first of all, we'll see where we are with it, and then we'll try to regenerate it in the process that we were thinking about, Ryan. And then maybe I'll pass it off to you to make it real and put it on GitHub and set up all the procedures and stuff, and we'll see how far we get.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
And I might shadow you in terms of writing the process as you're doing it in the chat interface. I might do a script that does the same thing.
Yes. Cool. So let me share my screen. What should I do? Should I share the entire window, perhaps? Okay, I'll try that and see what happens. Okay, so, sorry, let's bring that in. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so first of all, let's show what this little language looks like to get people excited, or lack thereof. So basically, this is some slightly earlier version of it, but slightly later version of it than what we were working on, Ryan. But yeah, this is the bit that I think is cool, right? So just to get people to follow what's happening here. The idea was that we wanted a workflow language that automatically figures out what it should run in parallel and what it should run in sequence, right? So basically, if you've used any sort of workflow program like Node-RED and the like, you end up having things like, you do basically manual. Create a node and draw the arrows, and then you have to like deal with like space allocation, stuff like that. And kind of the thought in my mind was like, why do you even have to do that? You should just declare which nodes you have in your thing and what their inputs and outputs are, and there's an algorithm you can write that will do the sort of the optimal parallelization of that flow. And then, long story short, I was kind of playing around with ChatGPT, and it revealed to me that there's this async.js library that exists already that can sort of do that if you use the .auto form of it. And then I started playing with that, and then I kind of realized, well, maybe I don't even need that, because what I really want is to just kind of take all of the functions I've declared with their inputs and outputs and just plug them in as promises, to like wrap them up and plug them as promises to each other. And effectively, when whichever function has all of its arguments ready, will execute, and it will produce more outputs, which will trigger more functions to start. So you don't even have to run an algorithm at all. You just wire everything up, start the first one, and just kind of like watch it roll to the degree that it will roll. So that was the insight I had. And then I guess the cool thing is that I started being very particular. The product guy came out of me, and I started being very particular about the syntax of the thing, right? So I wanted it to be absolutely minimal. So what we ended up with is this little language, which basically it's an object, right? It's a JavaScript object, and you declare your properties, and in every property you define a function. So this is obviously the trivial case where you have a function that returns a number. So you got task 1, which is, it returns 1, and task 2, which returns 2. But even here, you can see something really cool that happens, right? So task 3 just is a function that takes arguments task 1 and task 2. So this language automatically figures out that the names of the arguments are the outputs of the previous steps, task 1 and task 2. So task 3 will only run when task 1 and task 2 have completed, not because I said so, but because that's the earliest point that it can run, right? And it will, in this case, it will output the sum of task 1 and task 2. But the point is, like, you can add as many of these things as you want, and it will sort of find the right optimal flow without you having to think about it at all. Why this is cool is because there is a metaphor here between this and a chat interface, right? So if you think about, I think in my mind, the dominant metaphor is the Signal app, but actually that is isomorphic to the ChatGPT interface. But let's talk about the Signal app. If you've used it, if you haven't used it, I'm sorry. If you have used it, then you'll get this. But basically, Signal has this thing where you can sort of swipe right on a message, and you can sort of write your own message, and that's kind of a reply to the thing you swiped. So in this language, it's like saying my task, which is kind of my message, whatever, has that thing as its input, right? It's the same. Well, that's the analogous sort of primitive in this case, which means that it comes after it, right? A reply comes after the message it's replying to, and in this world, a task comes after the task whose output it requires, and so you basically get the same sequence, and that's really cool because you also it also draws a parallel between visual programming and chat interfaces, which I think will become extremely relevant. Now, I appreciate most people who are listening to this are not really, not all of this is making full sense. Just keep in mind that there are 3 or 4 things here that we see an analogy between. Like, there's this workflow language that you can see here. There is the ChatGPT interface. There's a Signal interface, and there's visual programming interfaces. And skipping over the details, just kind of take it on trust if you have to. We see all of these things as isomorphic, as basically being the same structure, just seen in different ways. And by finding the fact, by sort of understanding that fact, we are able to approach these things programmatically, like treat all of them as programs. And some of these are already treated as programs, obviously, like Node-RED is already treated as a program, but most people don't see ChatGPT conversations as programs, though you might see some of that, maybe not in the right, maybe not with the right metaphor, but almost nobody sees signal chats or group chats as programs. And I think that's where things started to become really exciting. But for today, for this little project, that all of that doesn't really matter. All of that matters to explain why we're doing this. But I think this is cool regardless. So we've made this little language, right? And it basically, again, as a user, you don't have to know how it does what it does. But in practice, what it does is it takes each task, and you don't have to name them task 1, task 2, task 3, and it doesn't really matter what order they're in. In JavaScript, you don't have a formal guarantee that the properties of an object are going to be in a specific order, but that doesn't matter because the actual order emerges from the implied dependency graph, and that graph emerges from the arguments you use for your functions. So we have this little language, right? And its implementation is basically where was it? I think this is the sorry. Let me find the one that. Yeah, I think this is one where. Okay. I think this is it. Yeah. So this is the implementation. Sorry, this is the code itself, and the implementation is basically this. Maybe I'm missing something. Like it's something about this kind of length, right? Like it's super tiny because effectively I am using/abusing a lot of features of JavaScript without necessarily doing much additional processing or whatever. It's just that they're being positioned in an interesting way to create this interesting little workflow language. Okay, so the next thing we did once we put that together is we asked it to write a test suite. And that got really cool because it made a test suite using Jest, I think. And Jest is this behavioral driven development style test suite generator or executor, whatever. And what's cool about that is that if you see how the tests are written in this language, they are declarative, as they're called, which in practice means that they're written like it should blah, right? It should do this, it should do that, it should do the other thing. And what's cool about that is that these are not too hard to see as prompts, right? So you can imagine building something as a set of prompts that are in that form, right? So then you kind of have a mapping between the concept of a sequence of prompts to the concept of a sequence of tests. And then from that, you can sort of see how you get to the code. So basically, I think what we're going to try to do now is we're going to try to start over, and we're going to try to write all of this in that form intentionally. So we're going to start by saying, I'm writing a JavaScript DSL, and it should blah, basically. I don't know exactly how that's going to look, and I don't even know if it's going to fully work out. I think it will, but
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, please.
For the starting point,
Mm-hmm.
there, as you scroll down here, at one point we said, "Write me or read me."
Yes.
It would be interesting to start from that point and say, "This is a README for a library." And use rather than a 2 or 3 sentence, description, and starting from where you started originally, because I sort of view this process as a cyclical loop, right? That you start with an idea, go through some test generation. You start with an idea, refine the idea, go through some test generation. use the test generator to generate the code, and then you wind up and say, okay, write me a good summary of what this is and how to use it, right? And then at a subsequent iteration, you can start from that README again, rather than starting from the sentence thing.
I think what I want to do is start from the test suite, right? That's kind of what I'm saying is like, I think or not the test suite, but the declarative form of the test suite. And the reason I'm saying that is because that is or can be at least orthogonal, right? It can have, each requirement can be a bullet. A README is more verbal, but I'm not sure if it's orthogonal, right? To the point where you can, atomically manipulate individual requirements. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that this is kind of the insight at least I had, and we're going to try it out, and maybe it's going to not work. At which point we will pivot. But like, I think if we
be able to type in that, right?
Yeah, right. And I mean, there's going to be a little bit of a sort of throat clearing, I guess, at the beginning to say like, okay, I want to make a JavaScript workflow DSL or something, right? But ideally, there should be as little of that as possible, just to get it in the right zone, and then the rest, as much as possible, should be in this form. Again, so the idea is that these should be like atomic little requirements that are as disjointed from each other as possible, so that they can be individually manipulated and tested. We'll find out if it works or not. I don't even fully know how that this will work, but let's give it a shot, see what happens. I'm kind of doing this a little bit on faith, but we'll see if it works. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're sort of writing up the process, I have 3 steps in mind. So the first step is to try to develop this process and make it ask me questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Once the questions that are coming back are not very interesting, I'll make it write the test suite. And once the test suite looks pretty decent, I'll make it write the code, right, and give me examples. And I think the idea is that I expect that to not be very interesting. I expect that to not be very good. But then what I'll do, what we'll do here now, is we'll go back to the top, and sort of add more requirements, hopefully sort of nudging it to become what we want.
Yeah.
Which in a way is the conversational development style we were kind of going for, right? You can sort of squint and imagine a world where we either are adding requirements or modifying requirements and seeing what comes out and then doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that is kind of like, I mean, I don't know, it's the closest I've seen to that idea that we had. And what's cool about it is that it's using or perhaps abusing existing primitives that the LLM might know pretty well, right? Like BDD and stuff like that is well understood. So we don't have to teach it many new concepts. We just put them in the right order, and hopefully it all works. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. So I would like let's say JavaScript based workflow DSL. It should use it should allow defining tasks as functions. It should accept synchronous and asynchronous functions. It should wrap all task functions in a wrapper. Am I being too specific here? Maybe I am. What else? It should.
I mean, I think so. This is kind of what I meant by the README thing, because that's sort of that was in your README, right? It's a list of like features, top level features.
Let's find out. Actually, let's find out. Let me remember. I don't genuinely. I don't remember what was in the README and what wasn't. So let's see. Come on. No. Oh my good day. Okay, so it like this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see if there was a. I mean, so that feels too high level. No, it might be good. Some of them are good. Like this one is good, right? Okay. Let's. I see what you mean. I'm willing to try this. Okay. So what you're basically saying is. It should be easy to use. It should do automatic dependency resolution.
I think you might be over optimizing a little bit on the should language. I think I think in the context of we've got the thing and we want to like add a new constraint or feature to it, I think that makes sense.
What do you mean?
Well, like you're rewording this list to do it in this language style of like everything starts with it should do this. I think you get just as good results if you just declare what it does.
So this is something I learned during my PhD when I was working on declarative languages and stuff. These lexical constraints are actually super helpful to induce a kind of discipline, right? Because when you tell people like, oh, just say what it does, people shift between declarative and imperative forms super easily. And I think this is why in BDD they have adopted such conventions, right? Like the it should thing, because that humans are LLMs in a way, right? Like it puts you in a mode of like, if it sounds weird to say it, and it should, maybe you shouldn't be saying it. See what I mean?
Sure.
So that's the thinking. But we'll find out. But I'm actually seeing this as a feature, not a bug. Even though I see where you're coming from, right? I see why it looks weird. I'm just trying to say,
well, I think it's I probably got my own bias here, right? Because in an automated context, right, you're going to be priming it with the system message, right? So when I've done this, what I say is I put my system message as like the user is going to present you with a documentation for a piece of software, including feature sets and usage example. Based on this description, write a test suite for it, right? And then you can give it just sort of the README style thing, and it will infer what the should style expression of those things are.
Right. But
But if
the
you're
problem with
starting,
that is that it doesn't constrain the user. See
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you want the user to be to have some guardrails so that they don't start, telling you their life story or whatever.
yeah,
Um, and the other thing is that you want the requirements to be articulated in a way that they are as orthogonal as possible, right? So each one is sort of you can imagine like a bag of requirements, and you can imagine mixing and matching with no problem, right? Or you can imagine like reordering these and not have any uh, adverse effects in terms of the end result, right? If the sequence matters, you are already on very thin ice in terms of the declarative nature of your work. And if the yeah the yeah, and if you're sort of starting to get into the mechanics of things as well, you are on thin ice. So um, in a perfect world, right, when you give it a list of requirements, at least the way I envision it, and it does something you don't like, your next thought is one of my existing requirements doing this,
hmm,
or did I miss a requirement?
yeah,
You see, like, did I under constrain it, or did I misconstrain it?
hmm,
And when you do that, then you can decide whether to add a constraint or modify a constraint, right? And then you can just do that and see the result. But again, like, that has the effect of um, narrowing down your own thought process to stuff that is most likely to have an effect. But good, the bonus you get here is that you're already within the BDD paradigm, which is going to make test generation super simple, which is going to make code generation super simple. So, whenever you do any of this, right, what are you looking for? You're looking for a representation that is some kind of sweet spot between how humans think and how machines think. So the gamble I'm trying to take here is that this kind of sits in a sweet spot, either for objective reasons, right? Like, because that's just a good place to be, or for subjective reasons, because for whatever reason, that's how BDD does it, and then it's the LLM has been trained on documents that include that paradigm, and it understands it, and therefore it can probably do it half decently. I think it's probably a little bit of both. But yeah, giving it a README file is not likely going to be as effective, I think, at pound for pound generating good code. That's my assumption. I might be wrong, right? I just want to see it through. I want to, like,
yeah, yeah,
experience it a little bit, see if it works or not. But does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. Go for it.
Okay. On anything that isn't clear about the spec below. Okay, here we go. And we've got our 4 p.m. Data center jam.
Hmm.
Oh my god. So yeah, Ryan, basically I'm envisioning this as something that will um, we would automate, like, this procedure of ask me questions, basically, right? And then
Yeah,
the answer to the questions, I'm not going to, like, type it out. I'm going to modify the spec, right?
yeah,
And keep going until the questions that are coming back are not that interesting, and then I'm going to be like, okay, write tests and then write code.
yeah. Well, in an automated scenario, right, you could almost you could answer the questions and then have the LLM accept the answers to the questions and update the spec for you in response to them.
Say that again.
You can give the answers, and then have the LLM merge the answers into the spec and return you an updated spec, and then lather, rinse, repeat.
Sure. Yeah, but again, that is additional magic that offers opportunities for things to. Of course, that will never happen. Okay. You mentioned DSL should wrap. Can you elaborate, behave, and interact with other parts of the system? For error handling, you specify what kind of errors expect to be handled. Okay, so it has no idea, basically, right? It's asking me everything at this point.
Yeah.
So the first question is, it's asking me the syntax, right? Which is fair enough.
Usage examples is a huge win to keep things on track. If across your stuff you have, like, here's my 5-line invocation, is that sort of becomes a North Star, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so provide examples of syntax that satisfies the spec below. So basically what I'm realizing is it's not really confused per se. It is just like, it's just unclear. Like, it's like, yeah, I get all these things, but I need to be more I need you to be more specific. So what I'm going to try to do is actually make it generate something and then constrain it.
Yeah.
Which isn't like amazing.
The approach that I've used in the past was with TypeScript, right? Just the equivalent of asking for the syntax was just give me the type declarations for something that would satisfy these requirements, right? And that sort of becomes an expression of the API.
Okay, here's something really interesting. This isn't even too bad. Like, this is actually cool features that we didn't have before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like having an automatic, like, dot, standard features, right? Before you had to write all of these, like, then, stuff, right? Okay, so where is the function even at this point? There's no function here.
It's just it's misinterpreted what you're doing. It told you, it's telling you to use RxJS and Workflow.js to accomplish your goals. Workflow.js is already a thing. So it's just saying, hey, you can use this for that. Oh, no, it says, let's call this. Oh, no, never mind. I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's not exactly. I mean, it's using that stuff, but not.
Yeah.
Okay, let's break down the code. Yeah. Okay, so I will say the dependencies should be. Okay, so this part, I want to narrow down on this part. Simply pass the dependencies as arguments. The dependencies should be passed as arguments to the task functions. And the library should automatically detect them. Okay, so with that clarification, let's see what happens. What in the world? That's not automated dependency resolution. Okay. Does this satisfy requirements? Ah, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna do one more thing. It should minimize boilerplate by automatically wrapping all tasks and observables. This also should also allow efficient handling of a synchronistic. Okay, so yeah, so what I guess now I'm realizing what I'm hoping this will do is it will look at this.
Yeah.
Did you check this out?
No.
How the fuck does this happen? Huh?
How did what happen? I don't know what I'm looking at.
The syntax is basically now
What we started with.
what we wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna not require async here. Okay. So wow, that is a lot of progress. It should accept async and synchronous functions as tasks. The wrapper should make sure to bridge gap. This is dog shit. Passive aggressive prompt.
So something to note here is that given you are like focus on the conciseness of the syntax, right?
Yep.
The syntax itself is a requirement that I think makes more sense to be coming from us than to be
I hear you. I hear you. I was hoping for a minute there that it could, that we wouldn't have to tell it, that it would basically, that the requirements would be such that it would converge upon the right syntax every time. And I found it really exciting that last time it kind of did that, right?
Right. I mean, you could give it. I mean, it's sort of just the long way around, right? You could say like, I want to be able to use function arguments as task name or task names as function arguments, and it should just be an object and blah. But
Yeah, sure.
I guess it's always like, I've run into this, as a developer, talking with people who have different requirements for a project, right? And it's like, there's a distinction between the requirements that I make for myself along the way to ensure that I deliver a good result, and the requirements that the client really, really cares about.
Okay.
And yeah, I think just for the overall paradigm, like, there are going to be cases where we don't care about the syntax, right? In which case, whatever it comes up with is good enough, and it just goes to the next step, right? As long as the thing works, who cares what the variable is named? Who cares whether it's an async function or an event emitter, right?
Yeah. No, well, again, what I was hoping is that the right syntax would emerge stably out of our requirements. That didn't happen. So I'm adding right. So I'm putting my thumb on the scale a little bit now. Look at that.
Better?
Yeah, that's not too bad, huh?
Yeah, that is better. Well,
okay. And then okay, it should okay, so then I will add another one, which is going to be a heavy hint, but whatevs. It should accept both traditional and arrow functions. Tasks.
the nice part of this is that this process leads you to, I mean, as much as we were talking the other day about virtue signaling test coverage, this process will, I think, yield, the kind of comprehensive test coverage and specification that analog developers can only dream of.
Yes, absolutely. This is, in fact, test-driven development.
This, it's test-driven development that
provable. Like, it's not like
if your only interface into this is give me a should clause.
Yeah.
Then
I think you're coming around to the paradigm.
No, I do like it. Yeah.
So I noted that I noted that sometimes it falls back to a pattern where it puts the dependencies in a separate property. So I think I need to strengthen that particular requirement, saying, that's a no-no. What even is this? Tasks. Oh, okay. Does that count?
Tasks. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay, let's still regenerate just to see how stable this is. Remember when you were saying back in the day, oh my God, what did it go into? Okay, so like how, so I've heard this super weird attack people are doing, right? They discover stable hallucinations that the LLM tends to make, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go and
there's a name for those, right?
What?
There's a name for like
facts.
Well, Touche. I saw
Facts
in
from latent space, latent
right.
facts.
Yeah, no, there was some. It was like a demon name or something. There was that thing with the weird, creepy lady that would show up in Midjourney.
Oh, is that the Anyway, I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Okay, so what did it do here? Okay, well, it found the right pattern. It accepts the sync. It accepts blah blah blah. It does the right thing. Yeah. Well, let's say give a more complex sample of implicit. Oh. Yep, that is basically right. Okay, so what do we do now, Ryan?
Well, now you've got.
Should we go for a test, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to. Well, yeah, you could do it there, too. That works. I have found that using Chatbot UI and setting the system message with the instructions,
Mm-hmm.
like there does seem to be a noticeable quality uptick when you say like the user will provide you with blah, do blah, and then you give it like the rules that have to do with it, and then the user input is just like your block of stuff, but probably close enough for something this simple. It doesn't really matter.
Do you see this?
Yeah.
This is fucking fantastic. Like it picked it up, right? I didn't say anything. I didn't say that this is a test bed or whatever. I said the right test for the spec below, and it. You see this? Like the shoulds are all lined up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. Write code that satisfies that passes the tests above. That these are the right dependencies, by the way. Again, right? It actually. Okay, this is working a lot better than I imagined.
Well, we'll know that when we actually put it into an editor
and do the thing.
Yeah. Don't forget our lessons from yesterday.
Yeah, fair enough. But like, anyway, sure. But looks right as well. Like I'm seeing it do some of the smart things I thought I invented yesterday, but they're clearly implicit in its,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're picking up a language out of latent space, basically, right? Like that's the cool part. This is fucking amazing, man. Like I'm genuinely blown away. Okay, so what else should we do?
Well, the thing to do. So I wrote the code. In my loop, I would, drop those two things into files.
Wait. Okay, one more thing.
Oh, did it go backwards?
Not really, but it asks to like have.
I've seen it do this pattern before where it wants you to declare the dependencies explicitly in the workflow object.
Yeah, but like it actually is doing this observable of thing, and like, why would it do that? Is that like it could even do this? Or look, I think what it's doing, weirdly enough, is that it's showing off that you could have observables as arrow functions, observables with arguments, non-observables, multi,
Maybe.
because I don't think
Can we look at the test cases for that?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The fact, let's take a look at the test cases closer. Find the test case that covers the argument name as thing.
The what? I never wrote that one.
You didn't?
Nope.
Okay, so it came up with a syntax where you do have to declare the.
No, it figured it out. That's what I'm saying.
But look through these tests. The dependency. No, you were in the right place. The test that it gave you.
Oh, this workflow. Is this what you mean?
Yeah, no. Go back to the tests because it wrote the code. The thing that it gave you it was based on the test, and if you go through the tests, look where it does like.
It is doing that. It is doing that.
So did it get that syntax? Well, I think so you first asked it for a syntax, but you didn't include the syntax itself in the subsequent.
No, we threw it away. Okay, so I need to actually confine it more.
I think defining an interface is a fine intermediary step, right? So even if you want to start with just a list of requirements, like rather than go requirements, like if you generate something that you think is on your path, you need to include it in the subsequent steps of the path. Because you can't try, and that's just going to be a general rule, because you can't rely on it to, even if it converges 99 out of 100 times, right? 1 out of 100 times, it's going to diverge on you again.
It did it again. Look at this. Depends on.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, if it doesn't, I mean, I need to ask it now. We always need to have this. If not smart GPT, at least, I mean, I'm gonna let it finish out of respect, but honestly, this is dog shit. Does this match requirements? That's sweet. Okay, so basically, yes, you didn't actually. Okay, so I don't know what to do now. It's no longer.
Lost the plot.
Yeah.
Try. I mean, so go back to the point where it gave you the syntax that you wanted, where it successfully got you that syntax.
This. No.
That's not the tests. There. That's the one you liked. So copy that into the top and say target the following syntax. And tell it generate tests and give it the requirements and that target of syntax. And
okay, let me see the. Is this right? Probably. Okay. Yeah, I'm. Okay. And then requirements. And then I should say generate tests. This is what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, while I do get that, I'm also sad about it.
Tiny violin.
Boo. I think it's about to explode. I think Sam Altman's data center bills are going through the roof. Okay. It is doing the right thing. Okay, and then I say write code, right?
Yeah.
You see, here's what happens, right? Here's why I'm sad, basically. When I said, why am I sad? And you were completely insensitive to my plight. Oh, you see, this time it didn't actually come up with the workflow.js thing. The dependency resolution is not fully implemented. Why would it be? Oh my god, what's happened? Why would it need dependency resolution? Anyway, yeah, so basically, here's the thing, right? In a perfect world, you want the syntax to be perfectly fluid to follow the requirements as they are today, right?
Right.
But there's an implicit requirement, effectively, that the syntax does not move unless absolutely necessary from the previous version, right? And so, that is a form of explicit path dependency. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch, but basically, when you release something, you are committed to that syntax, and if you want to change it, now you're breaking everybody's code, right? So,
Right. Well, it's a semver thing. So that's an excellent point. I would see that as I'm sort of viewing this as like, we've talked about this before. Like, there's not just one master loop, right? That is always the exact algorithm you go through from one version to another, right? Or there need not be, right? So the loop for fixing a bug report, right? Like, oh, when I configure XYZ this way, I get the system crashes, right? The loop for that is going to be like the debug loop is going to be different than the feature request loop or the refactor loop, right?
okay.
And there's
So,
probably a loop somewhere that's like, okay, you're incrementally adding features, right? And things get a little bit hairy, and then you say, okay, we want to do a major version bump, so we have the license to change the interface, given all the features that we've either defer, like you give it the bucket of like features that we decided not to put in this major version because we were hindered by the existing interfaces, or
yeah. So what you're assuming here is that there's a correspondence between how serious a user sees a problem to be and how serious a problem is. And that is, the right thing in 90% of the cases. And in 10% of the cases, it totally isn't. But that is not obvious. So I'll give you a very simple example from Balena history, but it is telling, right? So at Balena, we had this problem of the flashing instructions for our operating system were, constantly giving people trouble in support, right? And I remember one where, like, I noticed it and I was like, okay, guys, what the hell? So one person complained that the instructions that we had for Mac were not working, and that we should change the DD argument to be something. So we change it. The next day, we got another complaint that the new argument that we changed on a user's sort of nudging to work on Mac did not work on Mac, and we should change it to something else. But that something else happened to be the thing that it was before. Right? So, and I was like, all right, what the hell is going on? And so we started digging. And what we found out is that depending on what, where your command line instructions are coming from, basically on Mac, whether you got Darwin or whether you got some other Mac ports, I think. I'm probably messing it up, but the point is, like, there were two different toolkits that people tend to have, and the one is BSD lineage and the other one is Linux lineage. And the parameters for DD are not only different but incompatible. Like, they literally cannot be made mutually sort of compatible, right? And I was like, okay, this is ridiculous, right? And we really, that was really important to us because putting the OS on your device was really critical in our conversion flow to actually get devices on the platform. So I was like, Jesus, like how are we even gonna do this now? Like it's it's so messy. Um, so what we ended up doing is from all of that pain and suffering, we said, well, we're gonna make Etcher,
Yeah.
right? We're gonna make a whole product that just deals with the flashing, right? Because the whole process is a mess. There's so much detail to track that whatever, and that ended up being a massive boon because it turns out that we were not the only people with that problem. Everybody has that problem, and everybody wanted to use Etcher, and that was blah 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 blah, right? But long story short, a little bug, right, a little weird thing here and there might lead you to do a massive product revision. And the way I agree with what you said is that you probably want to start and approach it like a bug, but also bail out super easily into like feature and even like whole product revision mode. And in general, like have those things set in and allow an issue to transition from the one to the other, because ultimately problem space and solution space are not cleanly mapped, right?
Yeah.
Things that look like little problems are not necessarily little solutions, and things that look like big problems are not necessarily big solutions. See what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
The other thing that happened very often is users would be like, we need to add this button, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, why do you need to add this button? And they're like, because we're trying to do this thing. And the answer very often was, that is a stupid thing. Do not do the thing. So
I recall one of our earliest conversations, you and I was trying to use Balena for something, and I asked some question about running Open Balena on a device and getting it to provision itself from its copy of Open Balena. And I think it was the first and only time you texted me in all caps and you just shouted, "You're doing it wrong."
Yeah. Because at Balena we had this philosophy of like support-driven development, right, which actually shaped our product quite a bit. And I think if we have any advantage at all at Balena, it is that the product is super usable, right? Because we are competing with Amazon and Google. Google actually tried to enter the space twice and quit. The second time they tried to enter the space, they literally used Etcher. Like they I'm not kidding. They took our own software, right? And customized it. They didn't even share their patches. But long story short, they still failed. They still exited the space because ultimately they were not treating it as a product problem. They were treating it as a like bag of tools kind of problem, and it goes out of control. So we, by having this support-driven development, we were taking a very Apple style approach to the problem, basically, right? We were building the whole suite and we were integrating everything. So yeah, like, we have a lot of scar tissue, which is what you run into. But a lot of the times, things just magically work and you're like, how the hell does this work? And it's like, well, I wish I could tell you that we were geniuses that had seen this coming from a mile away. But on many things, we had to be dragged kicking and screaming to where the users wanted us to be. On other things, we had to insist, right, and push back against our users. Like a thing I would say super often inside Balena is, yeah, I know that if we change this one thing, right, if we break this one syntax, whatever, all of our users today will be upset. But we have two user bases, right? We have the user base today, and we have every user in the future. And you just can't steal from every user in the future by giving them a worse product to satisfy every user from the past, right? You have to be bold in improving your product because ultimately, this is a long run game, and you have to weigh the future against the past. A lot of people will be like, yeah, we're just not going to change that because that's how our users want it, even though that will make things a lot simpler, right? So long story short, again, coming back to this little syntax thing here, is it's hard to know when it is warranted to break the syntax and when not, right? Like,
yeah,
maybe at some point you will have a tiny little feature you want extra, and that is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, that in the combinatorial search space, there's just nothing left, right? There's no other solutions, and it's like, I can't. And so yeah, I don't think it's gonna be trivial to make good. Like you can make Soviet submarine style products that have like everything exposed for the user, right? That probably work like that. But if you want to have good ergonomics, which implies sort of making good abstractions, you are exposing yourself to this weird indirect mapping problem of problem space and solution space. And this is why I'm saying, like, what we're doing here, right, is we are effectively telling it, look, these are the requirements, and there's another requirement, which is like, to the best of your ability, do not break this syntax, right? And it might say yes, and it might say no. And we need to sort of then say, this change cannot be made within this major line of releases, right? We will have to make a new major.
Yeah.
But basically, like, instead of saying, here's the requirements, solve the problem, is like, here's the requirements and also minimize interface delta, which is a much harder problem.
Well, you just encode the interface at each iteration, right? You just say do
It's
this.
not hard to convey, but combinatorially, you are reducing its freedom of movement by a lot.
Yeah.
Right? There might be much better solutions if you let it loose. In fact, we should probably
talking about. I mean, so this in for this library, right? Syntax is design, right?
Yes.
So at that point, you're almost talking about a different. Like this is where I get into my point of about different loops, right? You if you have a bug that comes in that like is budding, there's the straw that breaks the camel's back bug, or is that it's the portal that leads you to a new vista, right? You have sort of passive flows that are watching for patterns that you've noticed, like watching for opportunities. And I mean, it's the same thought process you go through, right? The Mac OS bug was probably not the first bug related to flashing that you came across, right?
No. Yeah, it was probably the 100th.
Right. So you could have the process that's watching the incoming bug reports and like noticing when there's a critical mass in a certain category that's begging for a robust solution in its own right. So I don't know, like I get the point of like what you want, right? You want to minimize the delta internally, right? So that you're not pushing out a major semver every 3 days. Because no one will use your shit if they can't be consistent on it. But I think that the way to get out of that, right, in a world with intelligence too cheap to meter, is do all the things that a good company will do anyway, but encode all of those thought processes and have them all running constantly with eyes on your thing.
Let me give you another thought process, right? One other thing I used to tell people is, if you were a startup right now, right, that was looking at our market and was trying to eat our lunch, you would get, and let's say you knew our product super well, right? You would get to start over with all of the tools available today, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, how would you do it? Right? Like, how would you, if you have the same requirements as Balena, but not necessarily the same commitments, right? Interface commitments, then what can you make? And I thought that that is a very useful sort of mental exercise to go through, because the delta, right, between the best product that can be built today for our requirements and the product that we can build, you can call it the legacy tax, right?
Yeah.
And that legacy tax is basically the gap within which a startup can come in and crush you, right? So what you want, right, is probably to be running both of these, right? Run one with the new requirements and the old syntax, and one with the new requirements and not the old syntax, and then have some sort of value metric and say, like, okay, you know, the trying to stay compatible is now causing us to have 3 times as much code, for example. Right. Whatever your metric is, maybe it's causing us to be 5 times slower. I don't know. And therefore, this is the threshold at which we cut a new version.
Yeah.
For example, or it's causing us to omit certain features, right, that everybody wants, but we would have to break our syntax to do it, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you almost
yeah,
go ahead.
Want it's a variant of the tree of thought thing, right? You want to delineate the two types of requirements, right? One is the compatibility requirement, and one is the actual thing you're trying to accomplish requirement, right?
Yeah, from like you've got the like, call it the greenfield and brownfield version of requirement.
Right. Well, the functional requirement is always the same, right? It's always additive, or if you actually decide to drop something, then you decide to drop something. But it's the same in the greenfield and brownfield. But the brownfield carries with it the interface requirement, right? So it's like you should always be running a parallel process, right? Where you've got one flow that's like do this thing well, respecting the brownfield constraints.
Yeah.
And the other one is do this thing with greenfield, right? And that gets expensive, maybe
not, but
but if you do have it automated, right? If you have our little workflow generator, right?
Exactly, our little product compiler.
Then you can just be continually going, and you're continually looking at an A/B of like, this is what it would do if it didn't have all of our legacy tax.
Yeah.
And when that looks compelling enough as an improvement, then you say, okay, major version change.
Well, you basically do some sort of a cost benefit, right? Where you're like, okay, how much pain are we talking here, right? Can we do like can we create like a backwards compatible thing or whatever, right? Like, there's some equation somewhere, right, where you formalize these things, like, and you might not know the equation, but you can develop it over time as you're faced with these kinds of decisions. But like, there is a critical mass, basically, of benefit that you're like, okay, and it might not even be just the critical mass of benefit. It might be like a stability thing, right? Because if the new syntax that emerges, let's call it, from your requirements is substantially better, but then the next time you try it, it's a different syntax, right? And the next time you try it is a different syntax than that. You're like, okay, well, I'm not going to be doing that every time, right? But if like there's a somewhat stable paradigm, right? It's like, okay, well, you're moving now from like, I don't know, object oriented to functional or whatever, right? And it's clear that there's a tension in your code base where it wants to go, from the one direction to the other, and that there's substantial and stable benefits that you would get by going there. Then you get into that, like, okay, it's not a matter of if, it becomes a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, LLMs can help also reduce the pain by saying, you know what, like, we're going to try to keep the old code base as fresh as we can, right? Like, whichever requirements come in the future, even after we've made the break, we're going to attempt to put them in the old code base, right? Like in the old requirement base, so to speak. And some of them will go through and some of them won't. But we will commit to like keeping as many as we can in the old code base or whatever, right? Like, or we will, I mean, I guess the Balena approach would be we will make an infinity version of the old code base that wraps the new code base.
Right.
See what I mean? Like, and it exposes as much of it as it can, and what it can't expose, sorry, that's just not going to come through. But hey, if you update, which again, like syntax used to be a bitch, right? Like if you are stuck on the old syntax, then you have to go through and do a bunch of manual work. Today, syntax is like, just put it in the LLM, man.
Yeah.
Right? Like give us your old workflow and we give you a new workflow and it'll most likely work. So again, all of the weights have changed. Anyway, okay, I'm going to pause at that and let's try to do some more work here. So what I asked it to do is to regenerate, and it did regenerate. And I think this one is actually a better one that... Oh, they're just placeholders. Okay, well, can you provide a placeholder?
Hey,
okay, so actually, what?
Oh, I was going to ask you to drop me your requirements list.
No, I'll give you this this thing itself.
Okay.
I'll give you like so what I should have done here, right? If we're doing the process properly, instead of saying write code, I should have said, you know, I should have told it about this the JS doc sort of function interface thing.
JS doc function.
In fact, I'll just do it. Okay, so this is my, you know, the thing I developed the other day, right? Where I basically make a structure here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, this is kind of doing both. What is it? I should say empty, maybe. It's not doing it. What the hell? Okay. 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 And then I can say like write tests for the run function. Right? What is great about this is that context size doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, because you're continually collapsing. One shots, the way.
Well, because I'm carrying with me the stuff that matters. I mean,
yeah. No, this is the way. When I've done this, the way I do it is, you know, I give it the doc, and I have a system message that says the user will give you a doc, generate a type definition, right? And then I have another one that I start with a system message that says the user will give you a doc and a type specification, write a test suite. And then I give it the doc and the type generation, and it gives me the test suite. And I just and each step becomes its own one shot. And the nice thing about that is that it, as compared to like the, you know, linear back and forth, number one, you can take advantage of caching, right? So any step that hasn't changed along the way will just get pulled from storage rather than regenerated, which also I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you can't do that handy escape hatch of just like, oh, let me just make it try again, right? Let me just regenerate it. But I sort of presume that we've got Smart GPT for that. Smart GPT, that's sort of like a synthetic Smart GPT, so we don't need to feel too bad about that. But it keeps you from, as you generate more and more projects with a paradigm like that, it sort of keeps you honest, right? Because if you encode that process and that process works, and it works across 10 different modules that you wanted to make, then you have a higher degree of confidence, and that you're not like just sort of
sorry,
willy wagging.
I just posted the thing on YouTube. It doesn't matter. People want to see it. That's totally cool.
I've got it.
Anyway, so basically now I gave you like the bones of code that may or may not work, which we will find out. But let's see.
Yeah, you want me to use the code? Is this gonna?
I mean,
rest of your code. Is this gonna give me the right branch, or do I have to find it? What should I be seeing at the bottom?
Did you? Can you share your tab?
Oh yeah. Sorry, that would help, wouldn't it?
Oh, it totally would. I have no idea.
Okay. Is this? Am I looking at the right thing? Implement the run function.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the run function is the one function it generated as a stub. The rest of it is in the previous. So it's like the run function stub, the run function tests, the main code base with the stub that you need to replace, and then the main tests are before that.
Okay.
So test code, basically.
All right. I will also share my.
But the broad idea is like if we manage to. Yeah, the broad idea is that if we manage to stabilize our workflow, which is, it's a question, then, okay, I put your editor back on. If we manage to stabilize our prompt workflow, the idea is that whenever we, like what I visualize in my head is an interface where we just manipulate the top prompt, right? And the rest sort of flows without us caring. And the point is, if we do care, right, about the rest, then we have uncovered a requirement.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like if there's some fluctuation that upon reflection, it confirms it matches, if there's multiple ways to satisfy our requirements, basically, right? There's a degree of freedom in there that we're not happy with, then, our requirements have to resolve it.
So this is.
So just for anybody watching, what Ryan's doing is assembling the code, which again should be happening automatically eventually. Inshallah, we have some pretty good ideas for how to do that. And then he's going to just try to run the tests against it. So he's not doing any creative work per se, at least for now, until it starts finding.
Can't stop me when these tests fail.
No. You're going to stop yourself.
Hey. Yeah. All right. I am going to stop myself. It's getting to be close to dinner time. So I'm going to run. What test runner do we want?
Jest.
Okay. Do we specify Jest ever?
No, it. I think the shouldness is it's enough of a hint that it kind of just does that. What?
I use lots of jobs. I wouldn't say that's unique to Jest.
No, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying that the LLM seems to think so.
Oh yeah, it always recommends it. Yes.
So your important, your careful thoughts don't matter.
Yeah.
LLMs are such a technology that just flattens everything in so many ways.
All right. Am I backwards? Yes, I'm backwards. This needs to go there. And this needs to go here. So just for context, this repo that I'm in here is just, well, before we got on stream, I was messing around with my approximation of what I thought would be an automatic version of what we were working on today, which I'll show you after we do this. Let's test workflow.js. No test found. Oh. I have to name it something special. Oof.
What happened?
Workflow DSL is not a constructor. So let me just do a sanity check to make sure I didn't mess anything up.
Just tell it. Just.
Oh, Daddy, it's ready. Here.
Class workflow DSL.
Can you give it the error?
I just did. I already did.
Okay. Sorry, I've been getting distracted by a certain gremlin.
Oh, my bad. It mangled path. Oh, well, that's a nice different era. So it crashed completely. Here. Let me give it this. I named this folder Zergrush in honor of your tweet earlier today.
We have a viewer who says, it's funny watching you two try to create a library in a completely new manner. Just refine the prompt so long as the library provides the desired functionality. Yes. Somebody's sharing our pain.
Yeah.
Bjorn Rave, I think. I'm sorry for butchering your name. Maybe an even more elaborate feedback system rating only single requirements. What does that mean, rating only single requirements? It says, I think what would be super cool would be a feedback loop with maybe even ChatGPT himself to rate the answer, and if it scores below a certain score, you try it for maybe 5 times until the score improves. Right. So that, yes, now I got it. So that is basically a version. Like, yes, we will do something like that. Like Smart GPT is one of those things, but basically this is kind of like the metacognition type of stuff that can be used to improve the performance of ChatGPT. And we intend to use it. The chicken and egg problem we're having is that we are building this library in order to define these workflows. So we have to do this first.
Well,
what's your situation?
My situation is that it's broke. I'm now getting a new immediate crash error where resolve task is not a function. It gave me a new run task method.
Sorry, so where did you enter? Did you enter the error at the bottom?
What? Yeah.
You know what? I think we should probably first try to try the unit tests. Like, I think we should basically unwrap the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Right. We should actually do a TDD style where it's incremental.
Well, no. So we built this as a faux tree, right? Like where we've built the main bones of it, and then the functions. In this case, it's just one function, right?
Right.
But first, we wrote the test for the function, right?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we should validate that small step first, like the test for the function. And once that works, then we go to the bigger thing. The reason for that is that we need to know where an error is coming from.
Right.
Right. We need to know if it's on the global level or the local level, and which specific function is causing it. So by validating the functions individually first, right, and feeding it all back into it in terms of like the errors and whatnot, and then going to the global level, we know that an error is at the global level if it shows up at that point.
Yeah.
And then we can feed that error there and restart the process. Because now, if you do both integration steps together, right, you basically take the whole thing, jam the run function in there, run all the tests together, you don't actually know which layer of the prompt to trigger.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it sounded like it shouldn't make sense, but I also know what I'm trying to say, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in so many words, you're just testing things at the right level of detail for their implementation.
Yeah, but basically, when you get an error, right, we need to know which prompt fucked up. Like, was it the big one first, or was it the detailed function implementation that messed up? Right. And the good news is that by creating the test for the functions, we have the tool to.
Well, we created the test for the function after we created the scaffold, right?
Exactly. We created the test for the whole thing, then the scaffold, then the test for the stub, and then we filled in the stub. So what I'm saying is, like,
to run the test for the function first, right?
Yes.
You want me to go deep first.
Exactly. So basically, the generation goes top down, and the verification has to go bottom up.
Yeah, because it basically follows its breadcrumb trail back up.
Exactly. Because at any given point, if you find a irreconcilable difference, like if you find an error and you apply it to the scaffold, and that changes the architecture, that's going to invalidate all your functions, right? Like, so you really kind of want to solve it at the function level if you can. So it's really important to know, which level the error is.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing? So does that map to what you were doing or no?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing it as a whole thing, but I mean, it found something. I get the same error. So yeah, the error is definitely inside of here's the thing, is that this is not a failing test. this is a system crash.
That's fine.
Right.
That's fine. Well, if the test is triggering the thing to fail, that's fine.
Right.
That's also a failed test. It's
Right.
just not,
Yeah.
I think. I'm kind of blown away by what you said before, that this is solving my testing problem.
Right. Yeah. You get the virtue signal for free, but it's still worth doing. Right.
Well, it has a limiting principle, right? My biggest problem with testing is that there is no limiting principle. And now the limiting principle is, define requirements until you have cornered your design, until it comes out every time like you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my buckshot approach correctly, it still found. Yeah, I guess it doesn't change the result, right? Because it's the thing's just crashing, so it doesn't know whether it's in this, constructor of the new workflow DSL or whether it's in one of these things.
Are you still using did you revise the workflow DSL?
I undid it, so I have the original. When I give it the changed one, I get a completely different one.
Okay, can we go back to the ChatGPT window?
Yeah. I'm already here. I got both of them up, so you're in control of which one you see.
Okay, so have you done anything here after I gave it to you, or no?
Yes, I gave it the error.
Okay, so let's ignore the error you gave it, and can you just take the run function and try to test it with a test that it provided?
The run function,
as it was when I gave you the link.
That's I have done that. The run, what it gave you for the run function will not work.
Will it not work for the tests of the run function, or will it not work for the scaffold?
No, because it's dependent on the scaffold, right? It didn't just implement you a function; it implemented you a method on the class. So it depends on the construction of the rest of the class. It's not a pure function, is what I'm getting at. So I think your strategy is right, but for your strategy to work, the process is something like, give me a class, and for each class, the implementation should be a call to a pure function that we will write later with any context from the class passed in as arguments, right? Something like that.
Oh, the whole dependency injection thing, you mean?
Yeah. So you inject
okay. Can we do that? Can we do that? Like backtrack where I told it to write the scaffold. There's a prompt there. No, not there. Go down. Then there's a test. Here. Yeah. Can you zoom in a little, actually, because I'm seeing it super tiny.
Is that better?
Yeah. So right, leave any functions. Okay. So this basically modify it. You're just about to don't delete the whole thing, please. Like, can you just modify it gently to just be better, like, instead of just wiping it out? So what you want is what you're saying is any functions should be defined as separate variables, right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying every class method. The reason I want to delete it is because I can express what I'm saying better if I start from I know what I'm trying to express.
Do it. It's not just one test, though. What happened here?
It did something a little
Okay.
extra for us because it had the constructor, so it just gave us a utility function.
Is this it? 2 things?
Yeah, I mean this is the
Okay.
scaffold, right?
Great. Yeah. So then you basically can start 2 legs, right? Which is like write tests for the first stub, and then fill in the stub, and then write tests for the second stub, fill in the stub, and then test them separately, make sure they pass, and then plug them in. Make sense?
Yeah. What?
Your tendency to type stuff out is blowing my mind. Just a little. Okay, and then you can actually tell it to implement it, and then just test it before we go any further.
Yeah.
I don't love the fact that it's using records there. Is this broken the syntax again with a scaffold?
Hmm?
This record. Can you see the syntax it wants in the scaffold?
Doesn't have any dependencies.
Okay, fine. If the tests are good, then I suppose the code either will work or it will break. Are you back to the other tab, or should I go there?
Yeah, I'm just figuring out how to export this in CommonJS because I haven't used CommonJS in a while.
Wait, but the whole point was that.
Just hang with me. This is a hack to get around a stupid problem.
Okay.
Okay. Now we can run this test. You failed.
Great.
Wait, no. This is unexpected token. Oh. Whoops.
Is that you?
I tried to import it from RxJS instead of our actual code. There we go. So just is. Oh. What's that? Sweet. Okay. 5 tests passed. Now we go up.
Okay. Great. Now generate the second function, do the same.
Yep.
Are you feeling it? Like this is actually like what we've been trying to do for a long time, but I think we've got now enough insights all bunched up that it is actually flowing. You know, like I mean, you're still
Yeah. You cut out for a second.
doing it manually. Don't get me wrong, but like baffled at this point, right? It is all making sense.
It's way more automatic.
Right. I mean, yeah, and even if we hit more errors. Okay, you're back in ChatGPT, I see.
Not for long though. Oh yeah, that's the next module I'll make. I'll make something that'll ding the microphone when I switch tabs. That'd be a great feature for a live streaming thing. Something that like follows your context, but only amongst the tabs that you're sharing.
Yeah. You know, the other thing I've long wanted is I don't know if I've told you this, but like, do you know bone conduction mics?
Bone conduction. Yeah. I mean, not like a lot about them, but yeah. I know that they are.
Well, the cool thing is that they can be like, I've long wanted this thing, like a mic that uses a bone conduction mic as a gate, right? So bone conduction mics are famously crap in terms of quality, but they don't pick up environmental sound because they're literally like stuck to your cranium and literally picking up sound through bone conduction. But you kind of want the best of both worlds. So if you can use a bone conduction mic as a gate, then you can literally have a normal mic, high quality mic that will not trigger unless you're actually speaking. What's going on? Where are you? Are you back on the ID?
I'm just dealing with some merging by hand issues. I'm back in the ID.
Yep. Okay, so I don't know what to do now. Like I kind of want to stay here, but I'm also being pulled back up. I'm tempted to just kind of like leave the setup as is, and you can keep going, and either I will come back, or you can just wrap it whenever you feel like it.
I'd be okay wrapping now. I think we made a lot of headway. What I'd actually like to do really quickly, if you look at my ID, I just want to show you this stuff in action really quick. I can find it. Okay. So I've got this agent class that I was telling you about. And these are reusable system prompts, right?
I don't think we're gonna have time for me to make sense of any of this.
All right.
Like it's
anyway,
just a whole new chapter.
I can encode what you've just done, and I think that's what I'd like to start working on. I have the primitives at my disposal to encode the workflow that we just went to and the one that we're going down, and it'd be faster than me continuing to do it by hand. But I think I'm ready to make this automatic.
Okay. How's your Sunday looking? I think we need a big window. More than what we're doing here, right? Today, like we spent 2 hours, which is still fine for what we did. I think we made a major breakthroughs, but like we need probably like a 4 to 6 hour window. Especially because we've cleared out room now. We're not like banging our heads. I don't feel exhausted now. I feel excited.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to continue working, but I'm just kind of like, constrained. But maybe like we should sync up. But like, if we're both around on Sunday and can't work, maybe we can, like, I don't know, get together like early.
I explicitly am booked Sunday afternoon for a couple hours. I could do.
I'm not gonna, like, Sunday, right? Like, you can do whatever you want. I'm not gonna make you do anything. So whatever. I'm just kind of thinking, like, we need a day that we have a lot of time to just. I mean, if it's Monday, it's Monday, right? We're gonna use what we can use. I'm just sort of feeling the urge to start running, however we can. Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna wait. I'll definitely be hacking, and I'll probably shoot you links to something.
Okay.
And do likewise if you find anything.
All right.
We'll
So
probably get this set up on a Replit too, so that you're not blocked by me on anything. Or
I'm gonna be. That's not gonna really help much. Yeah. So basically, look, I think what we need is to set up that repo, right? And it's not that just the code or the process; it is the actual repo. Because on that repo, again, I have like a ton of things I want us to do, but we probably should do them together. And again, a lot of that stuff is stuff I've always wanted to do at Elena, but without the AI, they have been, just beyond reach. Even though we had a much larger team, but now we can, like, kind of steamroll it. I'm hoping.
Question for you: do you have any, will you forbid me to use TypeScript?
No, I don't mind. The only reason I'm not using TypeScript, I'm not forcing it to use TypeScript myself, is because it uses more tokens. But
sure,
go for it. I don't care.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, in that case, have a good weekend. I might ping you with some stuff to look at. If not, I'll see you Monday. And if you're up early on Sunday, I could probably do something.
I am up very early on Sunday. If you are around, please call me and we will start.
I'll let you know when I wake up, and if I have a large enough block before my appointments, I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. And otherwise, it's Monday, but let's try to actually do a decent sized block on Monday. All right.
Yep.
Well, for everybody who's watching, we didn't actually set up the repo that we wanted, but I think this was really cool, and I'm very excited about the process we've set up here. Honestly, the other thing we could do once we get this process working is to get it to come up with new requirements, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, it's essentially the idea that Algeron had, but again, reimagined, right? Instead of saying, make me new tests, it's like, make me new requirements, which will translate into new tests as well. Anyway, long story short, I think we really got something. This bridging of requirements, tests, and docs and code and backtracking and LLMs and everything, I think works like a dream. And yes, I think we can basically set up a whole feedback loop with a repo, right? Where pretty much you're having conversations through the issues list with the LLM. Anyway, okay, let's park it here for the moment, sadly, and we'll pick it up when we can. But I think for the first time in a while, we have open field ahead of us now. We're not stuck on anything. We just got a lot of stuff to start running at.
Yep, good stuff. All right.
Okay.
Talk to you.
See you, everybody.